Time for State of Play, the budget edition. Mark Eichmann is on our panel this week along with Spiros Mantsavinos from the Mantsavinos Group. Steve Martelli from Wilmington City Council is here as well. And Steve, you've done it again. Something's a little bit different.
Shaved.
Shaved the beard.
I shaved the beard.
Okay.
I got tired of the
couple of weeks,
Ted Kaczynski references.
Something a little different. Something not different in our topics this week, however, are budgets. First, the state budget. The governor has announced his plans. He wants to change health care benefits for state employees. Can that get done? That is the question for the next several months here.
I think it has to. I don't think there's really, at this point, I don't think there's really any option. I mean, it's clear that, again, the biggest issue facing any government is employee personnel costs, and the biggest cost associated with personnel costs is health care benefits. And something's got to give. We just can't continue to go in the same direction with, you know, employee not paying too much or having really good, because state of Delaware employees have really good health benefit plans. I don't know how you can do it. I know that there's probably going to be some talk about not necessarily doing it retroactively, but maybe from folks coming on board from this day forward. That
appears to be the question. Would it be current employees or future hires?
And that has been done before in the private sector. And like Steve said, it has to be done. You don't want to see anybody lose benefits, but you know, I think a lot of folks in the private sector really went through a period where they didn't have a choice. You know, you have folks in the private sector who were taking pay cuts, you know, the choice of taking a pay cut or lose a job. And they're living through this, and they've lived through the past 2 years. You know, unfortunately, it's going to have to get done. But I mean, it's been done in the private sector, and I think that's where you're starting to get a lot of this tension. People who are not government employees said, "Hey, I didn't have a choice. This was done to me." You know, and I don't think they're trying to be punitive or punish state employees. I mean, everybody recognizes the great work that they do, but it's different times. And if we are talking about shared sacrifice, you really need to really walk that talk, especially now. And hopefully, if you know there are some signs that the economy is turning around, if revenues can follow, this may not be, you know, it could be short-lived.
But when this goes through the unions and when this goes through the legislature, you know, 4 or 5 months down the road, you know, what is this plan going to look like? Probably nothing. Compared to what it looks like right now. It's got to go through some change and some compromise. Where is that compromise?
Well, it's certainly not going to be a pretty process. And I think the one thing that the governor has kind of on his side is he hasn't had to take this step yet. And he's tried over the past several budget cycles to find alternatives to not cutting benefits for state employees. But, you know, they're a very powerful group with very important people. In the legislature, a lot of support there for state employees, and rightfully so. So them raising their voice is going to get action done. And, you know, I think we do go back and see more of the big rallies outside Legislative Hall like we saw in last year, the year before, to fight this. What the compromise is, I think, is the big question. And
I think the compromise is the future employees. When I've been talking to lawmakers, I say, how do you think this vote is going to go? They say absolutely no chance that we're going to be talking about current employees, anything taken away. That's what they're saying. So,
you know, that's a bit counterintuitive to me. It's really politicizing the need to address cuts. I mean, again, and I say this quite often, we are a republic where our representatives are meant to make decisions that best serve their entire area of representation. And I venture to say that any state rep or state senator has a small number of state employees that live in that particular district in comparison to the number of privately employed or in some cases unemployed folks. And to Spiros' point, it's shared sacrifice. You know, it's tough to have sympathy for this one particular group when a much larger group has taken a lot harder and larger cuts over the course of 2 or 3 years. And it's not, again, it's not to say that we don't appreciate the work they're doing, that they don't do good work, but at some point the unions and the legislators got to stand up and say, we need to all address this problem together. Shared sacrifice truly has to be shared sacrifice. It just can't be lip service.
Right, and I think the point too that this has been a progressive process that the governor has taken. You know, in other states where you have governors coming in, they're going for the home run right in their first term. I mean, this is year 3 for the governor. You know, and to his credit, he's faced challenges head on, and he's taken the progressive steps as well as the legislature's taken the progressive steps. It's not like somebody has come in campaigning against union state employees or state workforce or anything like that. It's, hey, look, we've gone through the list. Here we are now.
It's their time.
This is now the third budget where the governor's been talking about drastic changes in how the government spends its money. That the need to bring those costs way down. If he doesn't get this accomplished this year, will that be looked at as a failure on the governor's part?
I don't think it is. I mean, it's tough to say that it would be a failure on the guy. I genuinely think you can't say that it's the governor's fault. I mean, he has a plan that he has to put in action, but that plan needs to have folks from the legislative side to buy into it. And as long as those folks from the legislative side are listening to those very powerful unions and those folks who are, standing outside of Legislative Hall with the big rallies and holding the signs, it's going to be a difficult task to overcome.
All right, let's switch to Newcastle County. New President Tom Kovac was just sworn in this week. What sort of budget issues does he inherit?
Well, he inherits just the same budget issues that all members of county council inherit. I mean, he is one of 13. Granted, his district is county-wide, so he has a little different perspective. But he and the rest of the county council are going to have to face again some significant issues in terms of the budget. Are we talking about starting to consider, again, reduction of services, personnel costs? I believe public safety is one of the highest cost drivers for county government. So. Where are those cuts going to be made? Again, tough choices for everyone.
Talking about where some of those cuts might come from, Mark, you just recently spoke with Paul Clark, the county executive. He had some interesting ideas.
Yeah, well, his point was that they've gotten a lot of the major cuts done, and there's not like huge things that can be cut out of the budget now. So one of the things he was throwing around in my interview with him last week was eliminating the use of spare tires in county fleet vehicles, because it adds, apparently all county vehicles have a full-size spare, including police cars, he was saying. Well, that's 70 pounds of weight, and removing that from the vehicle he thought would improve fuel efficiency, because he said they hardly ever have flats, and if they do, then they can just run on the donut until they can get a new tire. So that's one of the
projections on what that would save? Dozens of dollars.
Absolutely.
Speaking of dozens of dollars, first of all, there was a 7.4% voter turnout for the special election. Yeah. From everything I've seen, this cost $500,000. Is there a less expensive way to hold a special election? That's a lot of money. Use any analogy you want. That's 50 police officers. It's a lot of spare tires.
This is a topic and subject which is very near and dear to my heart, to be honest. We went through a similar thing here in the city with the appointment of Eric Robinson. Very, very good candidate, don't get me wrong. But I genuinely believe there are certain things that you just kind of have to grin and bear it and suck it up with regard to costs. And the people having a say who represents them is one thing that I don't think is negotiable. Many, and I don't want to be hyperbolic, but people have fought and died to preserve us and our right to vote. To take that away for the purpose of partisan politics, to keep one party in power more than other parties, to remove the choice from the publics, is to me is not negotiable. There's just no room. If it costs $1 million, it costs $1 million. That means then we need to stop having so many festivals, and we need to look for cost-saving other places. But it doesn't happen that often. It's a rare occurrence. If it's $500,000, when was the last time the county ever had one? If they did, that I know of, I don't know of any. The city has had over the last 20 years maybe 5 occurrences where they needed one, if that. And in the city, it's a little bit less. It would probably be, $10,000 to run a city. But I just don't think it's something that you can put a price tag on. People's right to vote is people's right to vote.
Why are only 7% of the people voting?
I think it's a Thursday. People weren't expecting that in January. Right. It's not there is probably some election fatigue.
Voter burnout, right?
Yeah, because we just went through quite a memorable election season this past year, and in a normal, you're talking about county council president. Most people who spend 7 minutes a month thinking about politics and government, may not be able to get their arms around the fact of what does a county council president do and what role does he or she have in the process. And again, a Thursday in January. It was just a lot of unique circumstances.
Again, and that's my point. Maybe there are some things we can change.
Absolutely.
Not eliminate this process, but do it a little less expensively. Don't put it on a Thursday in January, you know?
Well, when people who I am friends with and I know throughout my district and just throughout the city and the county and the state are calling me and saying, and people who are politically engaged are calling me and saying, hey, is there an election today? I mean, that to me speaks volumes. Right. I don't know whether it was a poor job of getting the message out from either side or from, you know, the Department of Elections. It's not necessarily their role, but you know, somebody dropped the ball somewhere in getting the word out that there's an election occurring. Because people, I mean, my own sister, who is about as politically engaged as they come, called me Thursday morning and said, hey, is something going on today? There's a little election going on.
All right. Once again, Delaware is in the spotlight. Let's see, in the last several months, we've had some very interesting political candidates. We've had a football team come very close to a national championship. We've had a Miss America contestant finish in the top 10. Right. We also have a guy who can make a pretty good cake. Is that up there with the other accomplishments? I mean, what's his Dana Herbert? I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but he won the TLC competition Next Great Baker. So congratulations to him. I know, Steve, you tape the show every week. What are your? I'm just kidding. You just heard us,
I enjoy some cakes. Is that what you're trying to say?
$50,000 kind of makes you want to go out and start learning how to bake or something.
Well, I'm never one to prevent anyone from making any kind of desserts or bakes or whatever, so cakes. So absolutely congratulations to him. And I'm curious what he's going to bring to Delaware. I mean, I read that he was thinking of expanding his current, he has something going on down in Newcastle, his own catering business or something. Mm-hmm. So I hope he brings something to Wilmington and, you know, maybe on Market Street Mall, a nice little bake shop or something.
Maybe you can stop by the program here and bring some selections of
because we have to test
goods.
Ourselves.
Exactly.
That's right.
This is,
I mean, do you have any openings for food critics? Right. I mean,
so what do you think the biggest accomplishment, or what do you, how do I put this? Because we have very different things in the spotlight recently. What are you most proud of, our little state of Delaware, accomplishing in the last few months here? Spiros.
Well, I think the University of Delaware football team taking that run. I mean, that was just great. I mean, and it just ties into, again, what's going on at the University of Delaware. You know, all the things that are happening down there with, you know, purchasing the Chrysler site. You can just really see that part of the state, you know, with the University of Delaware just really taking off, and to see the football team get national exposure like that, to have, you know, the head coach being talked about in other coaching jobs. You know, you kind of used to hearing that about Michigan or you know, or some of the other academic football areas, but now to hear, you know, University of Delaware getting, you know, getting that type of spotlight, and plus everything else that's happening there with the research that they're doing, with the economic development that's being sparked from there. I think that's just that's really what's going to be a story that we're going to be talking about for a long time.
I think for me the top two have got to be Miss America and what she has overcome, the challenge that she's overcome. I think it's just a great story. It really is. And number two is the fact that you know, Senator Coons won.
I knew he was going to say
that. That was the most interesting story by far.
Well, and also we kind of saved ourselves, didn't we?
Yes, we did. We redeemed ourselves.
Thanks, panel. Mark, Spiros, and Steve. We appreciate you being here.